Hi, everyone. Hello. We're just gonna wait a few minutes before we get started. So while we're waiting, why don't you all tell us a little about yourself and where you're coming from in the chat below? Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as we're waiting, you want to enter where you're coming from in the chat so we get to know you guys a little bit better.
Welcome, everybody. It only takes one person to do it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
everybody starts to do it.
Well, I'm Stephanie from Sudbury. If anyone else, there we go. Hi. Perfect. Take a hike foundation. Amazing. Perfect. Okay, so I think we're tapering off now, so we'll get started. So first of all, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here. I'm Stephanie Keel's marketing specialist, and before we get started, I just wanted to start the session today by acknowledging that Keela's head office is located in Vancouver, which on the transitional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and give thanks for the generosity and hospitality on these lands and waters. If you're new to Keela, welcome. Keela is a donor management fundraising platform that helps deepen donor engagement, centralize your data, and raise more for your cause. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a live Q&A. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to write any questions you have in the chat bot or the Q&A box below, and be sure to get to as many as we can. Speaking of the chat box, please remember to select everyone when you type so all of our guests today can read your comments and questions. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive access to the recording before the end of the week. So now all that out of the way, I'm very excited to welcome our guests, our speakers today. Brian Dillman, VP of Growth and Marketing here at Keela, and Meredith Gray, Head of Marketing at Keela. So without further ado, I'll pass it both to you guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Really excited to see so many of you on the call today from so many different places. You're all here because we are going to be diving into what we're calling Nonprofit Email Marketing 102 and advanced strategies for engaging your supporters. So as Steph mentioned, Bryna and I work on the marketing team here at Keela. But Brian and I are also fundraisers. So I myself spent about 10 years in the nonprofit sector, working kind of in a variety of different roles, but I spent a lot of time in peer-to-peer fundraising, diversifying revenue streams, and sponsorship and partnerships.
Yes, thank you. So glad to have Meredith and her expertise here. My name is Bryna Dillman, and I too am a Keela Marketing member. But most importantly, I also worked in the nonprofit sector at a variety of different national charities, working on nonprofit leadership, fundraising, strategy, development, nonprofit research, as well as data integration and integrity. So, really excited to be here. I would love this to be as much of a conversation versus us just talk at you. So, feel free to use the chat, ask questions, share your experiences. Not only is this an opportunity for us to talk to all of you, but all of you from around the world are able to talk to one another and share your experiences. So feel free to use the chat and talk to us and talk to each other and get the most out of the next 45 minutes to an hour instead of just listening to us. So, with that being said, I'm going to pass it to Meredith, who's going to lead this webinar. Oh, I'm leading this. Okay. So those of you who are here, I hope that some of you have been part of our Email 101 marketing webinar. If you have not, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We'll send you a recap. We'll send you, Cole's notes of what it was about. But just to give you a high level update, the tips were really just to talk to you about how to communicate effectively with your supporters and donors. We looked at things like what kind of subject lines to use, how to use storytelling. We talked about calls to action and some basic metrics you should be paying attention to. Yes, Kate, we'll send you 101. If anyone else would like to watch that webinar, we can definitely put our link to it in this chat. But today we're going to take it to the next level. So now we're going to go to 102. We're going to highlight 9 tips that you can use to take your email marketing efforts to the next level. and build on whatever we covered last. So get ready.
And it looks like Steph has put the link to 101 in the chat. So feel free to go and download that whenever you're ready. You won't be too lost today without having watched 101. So don't worry.
Yes, we've made this kind of its own separate opportunity for you to learn about email marketing, but absolutely take a look at the link in the chat. Thanks, Steph.
So let's get right into it. So our first tip is about segmentation. So in Email Marketing 101, we covered segmentation because it's really important regardless of if you're sending your first email or if you've been doing email marketing for years. And when we think about the introductory segmentation that we talked a little bit about in 101, we think about things like demographic information, location, event registrations, those kinds of things. But segmentation can actually be a lot more than just that. And I want to bring these numbers up on the screen. Again, you may have seen it in the last webinar, but it really reinforces that importance of segmentation. So 71% of consumers say a personalized experience would influence their decision to open and read an email. There is a 760% increase in email revenue from personalized and segmented emails, and a 202% better conversion rate from personalized CTAs over default or standard CTAs. So those are huge numbers for something that can be done fairly easily, and we'll get to a couple ways in which you can do it. But since you're all here in Email Marketing 102, you've likely tried or thought about segmenting your emails. But as Bryony said, we're here to kind of think beyond that standard and take things to the next level. So more advanced segmentation really does have endless opportunities, but here are a few of the ways that we've seen some of our nonprofit partners using segmentation. So the first is behavioral segmentation. So this involves categorizing donors based on their interactions and behaviors with your organization. So this could look like segmenting by event attendance versus event registration. It could be segmenting by donation frequency or donation amount or volunteer activity, or really any other behavioral themes that you see in how people engage with you and your organization. And the next segment methods, and I'm going to kind of bundle them together, but psychographic segmentation and lifestyle and interests. And these two really go hand in hand. So psychographic segmentation categorizes your contacts based on their personality traits, based on their values, based on their interests, their lifestyle choices. So if you're tracking this information in your database, and I know this isn't kind of the typical thing that you would ask maybe on a form or whatever it may be, but you can be collecting that information through phone calls and adding it to your CRM. But you can start segmenting based on things like what sport people like, or what areas of interest they have in your mission, or what is their motivation behind supporting your cause. And it can be a really powerful way to segment.
And those of you who are on the call, tell us, are you even asking this kind of information? If it's not on an original form, are you talking to your donors and writing it in your CRM? How are you collecting this information? And if you're not collecting this information, hopefully this presentation will help you start to think about how and why you should collect this information. Because again, those numbers Meredith showed are staggering. It's incredible. So it's an opportunity to really gain more information about your donors, to be able to talk to them about those pieces of information that they're sharing. Awesome. Deb is adding it to your next donor survey, and Caleb is using Keela's subscription preferences. Awesome. Let us know. Keep chatting. Sorry, Meredith, if I interrupted.
No, all good. You can also, so our next segmentation style is based on where they are in the donor journey. So you can segment and send targeted emails to all of your prospective donors, to all of your lapsed donors, your major donors, your P2P donors. Any way that you can think about different ways that people are at in the donor journey, you can segment and send them targeted emails. And then the last one is micro segmentation. So there's a reason why micro segmentation is more in the advanced section and less in the 101 section, because it can lead to really great results because the content that you're sending out will be highly personalized and relevant to your audience. But it can be a little bit more labor intensive because it involves really dividing your donor base into really narrow and specific segments such as, you know, engagement maybe with some of your specific content that you've put out, their preferred communication methods. Your segments are going to be a lot smaller, which does involve a little bit more work because you're going to be creating more variations of targeted emails. You're going to be creating more lists. So it's a little bit more labor intensive, but it can yield some really great results.
Okay, tip 2 of 9. Is everybody ready? There's lots of good info here. I'm really excited for you. Dynamic content customization. Yes. What does that mean, dynamic content customization? Let's get into it because it really can take your personalization to the next level. So let's talk about personalization codes. Nobody needs to be a coder here. Just want to clarify. When we say codes, we mean placeholders within your email content that are replaced with donor-specific information when the email is sent. What we mean by a code is, example, is using a code like first name to address donors by their first names. You can also use donor history and preferences. So a really good way to engage with someone is by acknowledging their history and their preferences. So again, if I walk into, you know, a store and it's the first time, they're greeting me with hello, welcome. If I come in every single day to buy this really, really, really good ice cream, not saying that's me, I'm just saying if I did every day, I would hope that the individual who is selling me this ice cream would be like, ah, we're out of stock, or guess what? There's a new flavor from the brand, and talking to me based on what I'm doing. So you can customize content based on past donations, the interactions that they've had with you. They've attended an event, they've volunteered, they're only a major donor. You can, so an example of that would be sending a message tailored to donors' preferences, their preferred causes, pardon me, or their preferred giving patterns. So if they only ever give via email, mention that. If they've only ever donated to a particular impact area, talk to them about that. Also, you want to look at mobile responsiveness. It's really important these days to ensure your emails are accessible to your audience. In fact, a recent study found that nearly half of people are choosing to open emails on their phones instead of on their computers. Can you believe it? I mean, I don't, but I'm probably not your average donor, or maybe I am, but it doesn't matter because it's saying this is a trend. So how many of you are actually double checking that you're having mobile responsiveness as an opportunity? You want to make sure your email templates are designed to be mobile friendly for donors who read them on their smartphones or tablets, and that they have a link to the web page that's also mobile friendly, especially if you're going to ask for donations. And again, you can talk about behavioral triggers. You can create content around different behaviors based on how your donors engage with you. This could be things like event registrations. What kind of content are they downloading on your site? How are they visiting your website? So an example could be sending a follow-up email with relevant content to donors who opened an event invitation but didn't register. A really good way to personalize. Hey, you're interested. Is the cost too much? Is it too far away? Is there not a virtual component? Again, engage with them. And again, these benefits of this dynamic content customization will help improve engagement. It will have higher conversion rates, and you'll create better donor relationships because it really allows your donors to receive more relevant content, increasing the likelihood of taking desired actions. So if where I buy ice cream and they're sending me messages about chips, that's great, but I'm interested in ice cream. If they're going to talk to me about new ice cream flavors, about bigger ice cream tubs, etc., I am absolutely 1000% interested.
Amazing. So our next tip number 3, is around automated workflows and using automated workflows. But some of you may be asking, what exactly is an automated workflow? So in nonprofit email marketing, automated workflows are preset sequences of emails and actions triggered by specific donor behaviors or milestones. So these kinds of workflows really allow us to engage with donors at the right time with relevant content. They allow us to nurture relationships and streamline communications to really make it easier on your fundraisers to engage with your donors. while also making sure that every donor is kind of hearing from you at the time that makes sense. So for example, we can set up workflows to automatically send welcome emails to new donors, follow up with event attendees, re-engage lapsed supporters, kind of a lot of what you can think of, you could probably create an automated workflow for. And this ensures that our communication is timely and tailored to each donor. So we're a big fan of automated workflows at Keela, and part of the reason why is that companies using automated emails see a 152% higher click-through rate compared to manual emails. So that's pretty significant, right? And it's definitely something that everyone should look into. So an automated workflow usually looks kind of like this, and you would set it up in whatever email marketing platform you're using. If the platform that you're using does not allow you to do this, I would suggest looking into some that do. It's a huge support with your day-to-day work, and we're seeing a lot more nonprofits start to do this. But to set up an automated workflow, so you'd first choose kind of your starting point or your trigger. And this could be when somebody makes a donation for the first time, or registers for an event, or hasn't made a gift in a long time, or they're celebrating a special occasion. You can decide what sets that trigger off for the workflow. And then you would apply filters. So in the example of a new donor, so somebody making a gift to you for the first time, you could make the trigger that they made their first donation and then filter based on donation amount. So your filters are actually kind of acting as your segmentation, and it's doing it for you. And then you would finish with your action. So kind of following this new donor example, let's say your trigger is any new donor that makes a gift for the first time. Your filter is that they made a donation under $100, and then your action would be that they receive a custom email that talks about what their donation did. And then you can set additional filters on this workflow for anyone that makes a gift over $100. So anybody who makes a larger gift, they may receive a different email that shares a different impact statement of something they accomplished. So that's just an example, but there are tons of ways that you can do these workflows, and they're so, so valuable. If for nothing else, then to get more time back in your day and spend more time, building those one-to-one donor relationships.
Okay, tip number 4 out of 9. We're getting there. Perform A/B testing to optimize your emails. What does that even mean? Does anybody do A/B testing? 1-2 testing, CD, YZ? How does anybody refer to them? So I'll tell you a little bit about awesome. Yes, tell me, are you doing it? Is it working? So we'll give you a little overview of why and how and what we mean. Nice, Deborah. I'm glad you're doing it. The first step in A/B testing is deciding what you want to test. So what you're trying to learn more about. You can't do A/B testing with like 8 things on a site. It won't work. So you want to test various elements, but one at a time, such as a subject line or email copy or images or calls to action, sender names. Sometimes when I was in the nonprofit sector, we would use our CEO as the sender, even though the CEO isn't necessarily running the program, but they're the most, visual face of the company. Sometimes we would use an individual impacted. If you're talking about an animal organization, make it a sign off from your little doggy or your cat. Really, it's about setting clear objectives. It's important to have clear objectives in A/B testing so that you should already have a hypothesis of what you think will happen and expected outcomes you're trying to confirm or deny. And that's really important in A/B testing because you don't want to just try it to try it. So for example, you want to say, we're testing different subject lines to increase our email open rates by 10%. So let's try it with this copy, or let's try it with this B copy. And that way you really have an outcome that you're trying to achieve and a hypothesis. You think A might be a little bit better, but you don't know. So why don't you test it? And that's a really, really good way to kind of test the waters in certain things like email subject lines. Next, you're going to really want to select your subset for your test. So what do you mean by that? Your subset should be randomly chosen and representative of your overall audience, and you will be comparing the performance of both versions, A and B, within this subset. Next, you want to track your test. So once you have that information, you can launch your test, and it's really important to track your data, open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, engagement, to really understand how successful or not your A/B testing is. And then you want to go even further and you want to analyze those results. So you want to be able to draw meaningful conclusions. So you, again, don't want to completely, opposing, or maybe you do, subject lines or some that are so close together, you might not be able to analyze it appropriately, but you really want to analyze your data, and you'll want to look at the results of your test to see which one got closer to your hypothesis and to your objectives, i.e. this one, we said open rates. And then you want to make those changes. So finally, you want to make the changes in the future. The winning version of your test now will become the new control version, and you send that to everybody outside of your subset, and it can be used for future testing. Therefore, if you want to do new testing down the line, when you think, if you're always talking about the pandemic because it was quite relevant and that was your testing, and the one when you said pandemic in the subject line got really higher open rates, okay, a couple of years later, pandemic might not necessarily be a trigger to get people to open it, but that's now your test, and then you use another one for your example. So again, always try to have your hypothesis and then analyze it and ensure it's meeting your objectives, and make sure you set those objectives first before you even try A/B testing.
Okay, so tip number 5, I feel like we're flying through these. The next tip is to make data-informed decisions. So if you've been sending emails for a while and you aren't seeing the results you anticipated, you can probably find the reasons why within your data. So data-informed email marketing really, again, has endless possibilities, but a few ways to get started are to collect relevant data. So this is really important for segmentation. So through your online forms, in conversations with donors, during events, during phone calls, you should be thinking about the information that would be valuable for your email marketing efforts. If you are not responsible for your email marketing efforts, maybe you talk to your marketing team, find out what they're looking for, but there are a lot of ways that you can kind of weave that into conversations and then make sure that information gets back into your CRM so that you can use it for segmentation. The next tip is to set clear objectives. So Brianna talked a little bit about this when she was just talking about A/B testing, but you should have clear objectives for what you're trying to accomplish through your emails. So whether it's to keep your donors engaged, like by using a newsletter, or to raise money with an appeal, you should always keep in mind the purpose of your emails. And then you want to ensure your email marketing is using data to set KPIs. So look at your open rates, look at your click-throughs, any other metrics, and then set ambitious but achievable growth goals and track them, right? And look at industry standard. You may not be meeting industry standard right now, and I'll talk a little bit about some industry standards, but that's okay. But when you have to identify that first by using your data before you can start making changes to correct it. And then you're also going to want to analyze your segments. So look at which segments are performing well and which aren't. Is that a problem with your segmentation? Is that a problem with your content? There are lots and lots of changes that can be made when looking at how your segments are performing. And then finally, make constant improvement. So email marketing is not a set it and forget it job. You should constantly be looking at your data and finding areas of opportunity. It's something Stephanie and I do here at Keela all the time. We're always looking at our metrics from our emails and trying to make them better so that they are more relevant to our audience. But I want to dive into a few of the most kind of important metrics and the most relevant metrics that you are likely already looking into. I think I saw somebody mention that they look at their open rates, which is great. So that is the first one. So your open rate is the percentage of people that open your email. So industry standard for nonprofits is around 28% open rate. So if you have an open rate that is significantly lower than that, there are a few things you should look into. That is also an excellent open rate. The nonprofit industry is actually a lot higher in your standards and your benchmarks than a lot of other industries. So that's really good news. But if you are below that, you should start by looking at your subject line. So 35% of people open an email based on the subject line alone. So if you're not seeing good open rates, that could be the problem. Make sure your subject line is relevant, it's short, it's catchy. We did a lot more and talked a lot more around subject lines in Email Marketing 101, so feel free to go check that out. The next step would be to look at your segments and personalizations. I feel like I've said the word segments like 10,000 times already, and I'm going to say it a whole bunch more times because it's so important. But it's possible that you are sending emails that aren't relevant to your segments. So they're not interested. Just like Bryna said, she likes ice cream. She doesn't want to get emails about chips. I would love to get emails about chips, but that's me. And Bryna and I are different people, right? So ensure that your segments and personalization align with the content that is in your email and is in your subject line. And finally, check your sender name and address. So we always recommend you have a person be the sender. So for example, somebody from your fundraising team, maybe your CEO, somebody from your community, but having an actual sender name versus, the name of your organization encourages more people to open your email and could support, a boost in your open rates. And the next important metric is click-through rate. So, which is the percentage of contacts that open your email and click on your call to action. So the average nonprofit click-through rate is around 3%. So if yours is significantly lower, there are a few things that you should look at. The first is content and design. Again, is the content relevant to the audience that you're sending it to? If not, it needs to change. But you should also look at your design. Is your CTA button prominent enough? Is it hidden because you've got too many graphics that are distracting the reader? There's a lot of changes that can be made in your design that can boost your click-through rates. And then the next is to, again, look at your personalization and segments. Are they relevant? Have you personalized the email enough that people feel inspired to do what you are asking them to do? And then finally, look at your CTA. So your call to action, it should be brief, it should be urgent. If it's not getting the traction that you want from your CTA, a simple change in the language that you're using could boost your click-through rate. Your CTA is also a great thing to A/B test. We learn a ton from A/B testing our CTAs here at Keela, so I would always recommend A/B testing your CTAs. And then finally, I want to look at conversion rate really quickly. So your conversion rate is the percentage of recipients who clicked on a link and completed the action that you wanted them to do. So that could be making a donation. Probably for a lot of you, that is what it is, or signing up to be a volunteer or whatever it may be. But if you're not seeing as much action taken from your emails as you would like, there are a few things that you can look at. Again, review your CTA. It might not be resonating, but if your click-through rate is good, but your conversion rate is low, it could be an issue on your landing page. It could be, maybe the where you're sending them isn't consistent with the language you're using in the email. So just take a look at kind of where you're sending people. If you're getting people with the click, but they're not doing what you need them to do. And then look at your content and your segments. Again, your emails might just not be resonating with the people that you're sending them to. It's one of the most common things we see is that people are just sending the wrong things to the wrong segments, or they're not segmenting at all and just sending e-blasts out. So that is always kind of, your segments should be at the center of everything you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm just reading some of the comments, and someone mentioned that they've been testing at different times of the week, and it's not really enough to make a difference. Testing a time of the week isn't necessarily as important nowadays that people are using their phones. So I think in the past, when people would log on to their computers Monday to Friday and log off to go home before, they could get access to emails and information 24/7 pretty much now. Time of day doesn't make the difference. It's all of these tips that we're including that really do, is that understanding, are you personalizing? Are you adding the right content? Are you understanding who you're speaking to? Does the content resonate in the email, and does it match the donation page, etc.? And I'm going to go into number 6 just to keep it moving, but these are all the things that we want all of you to think about, because testing different subject lines and testing different times of day is great, but we want to give you these 9 tips to just take it to the next step. So tip number 6 is interactive elements, and I'm going to show you some visuals of what I mean by that. But interactive content is 2 times more likely to engage your audience. So what is an example? Progress bars and milestones. So if you take a look at the next slide, you'll see what I mean by images. Are you able to have a tracker or thermometer to be able to showcase either in the email, which would be fantastic, or on your landing page where people donate. We have a few ideas, and it really is an opportunity to have people see in real time how much money is being raised. Some people are nervous. I don't want to give $20. I don't want to give $10. It's not going to do anything. But they can see that that 2, 5, 10, 15, $20, whatever it might be, is doing something. It's really exciting, showing people how close you are to your goals and how close they are to helping you reach those goals. A next opportunity to really engage with your audience is polls and surveys. There are ways you can actually embed polls and surveys into your actual emails, and you can use those to collect valuable information for your audience. So, for example, you could ask how satisfied they are with their donor experience, or which areas of your mission they're most interested in, or what areas of interest within your fundraising programs, so that you can ensure you're pulling the right people into your audience segments. Another opportunity is to use sliders and carousels. So these are really great ways to get your audience engaged with your emails and learn more in a fun and cool interactive way. You can have them slide through different images and showcase your mission and highlight the impact. You can have them scroll through different fundraising events you have coming up. You can record even short videos from people in your community and showcase them in your emails. There are lots of really interesting ways that you can use these to make your emails more interactive. And finally, you really want to include call to action buttons. What do you want this individual reading your message and reading your email? What do you want them to do? One call to action is really, really essential, and repeating it over and over within your email is absolutely okay. But you want to enhance them by drawing attention to that call to action so people can easily understand where they're clicking and what you want them to do with their actions.
Okay, tip number 7. So the next tip is to integrate your email marketing with your other channels. So there is a marketing rule of 7 that basically says that somebody needs to see something around 7 times before they will be provoked to take an action. So using multiple channels is the fastest way to get to that 7. So to do this successfully, you're going to want to look at the channels that your audience is the most engaged. So this is usually your social channels or your website, but it's a really great opportunity to think beyond. So if you're using direct mail or telemarketing, I know there's still a lot of nonprofits who are doing both of those things. And we're seeing texting becoming an up and coming way of fundraising. And you can use all of those channels to reach that 7. And by using similar messaging on all of these channels around the same time, so if you're running a campaign, if you're trying to recruit for an event, you have a much higher likelihood of inspiring your audience to take action. And you also have a greater likelihood of just getting it in front of people. We know not everybody wants to read their emails. We know not everybody's going to open the direct mail. So the more kind of spread you have on your channels, the more likely it is that people will see it and do the action that you're asking them to do.
Okay, tip 8 of 9, prioritize accessibility. What do we mean by that? You want to make sure your emails are accessible. It's crucial because it allows all recipients, regardless of any type of challenge or anything, to fully engage with your nonprofit's content and mission, promoting inclusivity and expanding your reach. So we could do a whole webinar actually on email accessibility, but we've really just highlighted 3 common areas where you'll want to ensure that your emails are accessible to your audience. So contrast and color are vital for email accessibility because they ensure that the text and the content are easily distinguishable, making it possible for individuals with any visual impairments to read and understand your message. Even people who have no visual impairments, that there's colors that work best for the eye to be able to see and to understand. Proper contrast and color choices actually enhance legibility, inclusivity, and ensures that your nonprofit's emails can be accessed and appreciated by a wider audience. This is really important for your call to action buttons, and it's a great thing to test during A/B testing. A lot of nonprofits use colors that match their organization, which is fantastic, but ensure that if you are using your colors and your branding, that you have had somebody review it who has education in accessibility to ensure that it's the right color contrast with one another. Another really important opportunity, especially we've been talking here about images or on your website images. Image alt text is essential for email accessibility as it really provides a descriptive text alternative for images. This could be in your emails, but also on your website, your donation pages. And enabling individuals with any kind of visual impairments to understand the content and context of your visuals within your email is very important. You want to ensure that all recipients, including those using screen readers, can access and engage with your nonprofit's message. So again, using image alt text will display if there's a problem with loading an image, which can happen. And certain email providers, unfortunately, can't always guarantee that it won't happen. So having an alt text that describes the image ensures that anyone, no matter what, whether it's the email provider fault or any visual challenges, that the image will be able to be communicated to all individuals reading it. And then responsive design. We talked a little bit about this before, but ensuring that your image responsive design is a technique that ensures images within emails automatically adjust in size and format to fit any kind of screen or device. So it's important for email accessibility because it ensures that images remain visually coherent and accessible on desktop, mobile devices, anything that's, anything that anybody could be using to read and review your content. And it's really important to promote an inclusive experience for your supporters.
Okay, we've done it. We're at tip number 9. We flew through those. So if you have any questions, definitely submit them and Bryno and I will answer as many as we can. But the final tip that we want to leave you with is to consider common challenges. Email marketing is not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but we can learn a lot from other people's trial and error and avoid making common mistakes. So some of the common challenges that we see when we work with nonprofits, there are a lot out there, but we've kind of categorized them here into a few things that you may have other challenges. So feel free to let us know. But the first challenge is limited resources. So Brian and I come from the nonprofit sector. We know you are always trying to do more with less. We've been there. We have, scrappily thrown together emails just to get something out the door. We get it. There's a lot going on all the time. So finding the resources to do it all can be really challenging. So this is where something like automation can actually be really helpful. It's something that you can kind of set and forget and focus on other things and then revisit it a little bit down the line. I would also really encourage you all to look into some of the AI tools that are coming out if you're comfortable with that at this point, but things like ChatGPT, these can all really support you to kind of create these emails, make things a little bit easier. It can even give you ideas for segmentation. Brian and I also did a whole webinar on kind of AI in fundraising. So feel free to check that out as well. It's on our website, and maybe I'm throwing Steph another one here, but Steph, if you're able to put the link in the chat, that would be awesome. But look into them because it's coming a long way and it's not going to go away. So we should be kind of looking into how we can leverage those tools to support our day-to-day work. The next challenge that we see a lot of is list quality and growth. So your list might be messy, it might be stagnant, and that's okay. But that means that you need to be regularly cleaning and updating your email lists, as well as looking at different opt-in strategies that you can use to grow your list. So maybe you can create more content that people will want to download. Maybe you can promote your newsletter a little bit differently to get more of those email addresses in your system and grow your list. Maintaining that clean list is also really important because you're going to see if you're sending it to people who, maybe have been in your system for a long time but haven't been engaging, it could affect your unsubscribe rates as well as your bounce rates. So it's good to stay on top of your list as much as you can. The next challenge is content relevance. So I feel like you've heard me say this a million times in the last 45 minutes, but This is where segmentation comes in again, and avoiding sending the same generic email to everyone in your database, as they may not find that content useful. So try to segment as much as you can. It's really going to help you with getting the right message out to the right people. The next one is donor fatigue. So this is a common challenge with nonprofit email marketing. So make sure that you are carefully scheduling your emails at a time that, I mean, we talked about different timing to send emails, and it isn't as much of an issue now as it used to be, but you should look into your stats and see, are you sending an email at the time where it's giving you the greatest visibility? I know I'm somebody who subscribes to a million mailing lists, and I wake up in the morning and I have, 20 emails about shoes that I want to buy or a show I want to go to. So a lot of people send emails right in the morning. So even just spacing them out a little bit to consider, not just the emails they might be getting from other nonprofits, but marketing emails from for-profit companies as well. It also kind of helps you when you're thinking about avoiding excessive messaging and ensuring that your emails are meaningful. You want to get it in front of as many people as you can. And then finally, competing for attention is always a challenge. Again, lots of nonprofits out there, lots of them sending similar emails to you. So it's important to ensure that your subject line inspires them to open your email and that your content is visually engaging to capture their attention. So I think that's all we have. So I've got our contact information up there. If you want to reach out to Brian or I, if we can help you at all, please don't hesitate to do so. But we'll get into some questions.
Great. So yeah, we've got a few questions here. So yeah, please enter any questions you have in the Q&A section or the chat below. So this one we got asked a couple times about A/B testing. How big or like the minimum number should your segments be in A/B testing?
I mean, if you have like 500 people, that is a good kind of number to be in. If you don't have that many, you can still do it. It's just your results aren't as conclusive. So it may be something that if you don't have up to 500 people, that maybe you are looking at building up your email list before you start doing A/B testing.
Great. And we got another question here. So our weekly volunteer email gets about 43% open rates, and our newsletter gets about 50 to 55%, but they have little to no engagement between 0.5% to 1%. So how could they help increase their overall click-through rate?
So that would actually go back to one of the slides that we had talked about here, but actually here, we'll leave it. But we're going to send out the slides afterwards, but all this information should be on the slides. But that's when you're looking at what language you're using on your CTA button. You may want to do some A/B testing to try out a couple different things. Are people able to easily find your CTA button? Something that we do at Keela is we tend to put two. They're the same call to action, but we'll put one kind of halfway down and then one towards the bottom so that even if people don't necessarily scroll all the way to the bottom, they'll still see our call to action. Is your design too kind of cluttered and people are losing the call to action? And then I would also look at the relevance. So is your call to action aligning with the rest of the content in your email? Does it make sense what you're asking people to do based on the content? Those are usually where we see the most.
And who are you sending it to? Are you asking volunteers and event participants to donate to a campaign? So again, just ensure that you're sending it to the target audience, or that you understand who you're sending it to, and you can kind of even have the same call to action and have them donate, but have the button say something different to the volunteers than to the event participants, to your major donors, etc. So lots of opportunity again with personalization.
Amazing. We have a question here from Jen. Any tips where we can start, any tips about starting a newsletter basically from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, think about what you are trying to accomplish with your newsletter, right? Before you even put one together. Are you trying to get people to donate? Are you trying to share information about what your team is working on? I would start, if it is your first ever newsletter, I wouldn't necessarily jump right in with a call to action to donate or an ask. If you're It's an introductory newsletter, right? So introduce the organization. If they've never heard from you before in a newsletter, they may be new. Talk about what you're working on. Talk about the exciting things that you have coming up. And then use your newsletter to kind of provide those updates. And then you can kind of start sneaking in those CTAs to donate. But you have to kind of build them up a little bit before you make that ask.
And ask, put a survey in there or a poll. What are you interested in learning more about? What's happening in the industry? Are you interested in learning on how we support the community? Are you interested in learning about volunteer opportunities? So again, the more you ask and engage with your audience, the more you're going to get information. And then you use that information to be able to provide what Meredith said, what's the objective, but let even your new audience help dictate that, because then they're more likely to open and to click if you're speaking directly to them.
Amazing. So another question here. Is there a list of tools that we can use to help capitalize on some of these tips? Tools for things like personalized images, embedded carousels, etc.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to some of the AI tools we were talking about. So there are, I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but there are tools out there that you can look into where you can like type things in and it will create images for you. There's lots of like things like ChatGPT can write alt text for you. It can write, again, like develop segments for you. There's all kinds of these things, but what should really be doing the most heavy lifting for you is your email marketing platform. If you can't get things like open rate or click through or time of data sent, like those kinds of things from your email marketing platform, it's time to potentially look at your email marketing platform options. I think a lot of them come with those features now, but it should really guide you towards the metrics that you need to be looking at.
Amazing. And we got a question here from Jeff, and I think actually I could answer this one. They're interested in learning about the industry standard for unsubscribe rates for email blasts. So I've been kind of doing some research about this, and industry standard for nonprofit organizations is around 0.4%. So anything around that is great. If you see anything higher than that, that's when you should maybe start worrying about who you're sending your list to and whatnot. We got another question here. Is there a difference between using tags and segments?
I think it would depend on what platform you're using. Like I've used a few different ones. And Brenna and Steph, feel free to jump in here. But when I say segment, I mean like that's basically your groupings, right? So the way that I have only seen this work is like I decide what my segments are, and then you assign a tag to them in the system that would identify that segment or the people who should be in that segment. So I think one of them is like what you're trying to do, and then the other one is the technical way that you're doing it. But if that is not what you were asking, feel free to jump in again.
I think that makes sense also, right? Because you can have people in one segment but have different tags. Yes. So there's an opportunity to engage one person and talk to them in a couple of different ways based on how they've interacted with your organization.
Yeah. And do you have any suggestions on some wording to avoid or some good email subject lines to use and phrases?
Yeah, I mean, for email subject lines, what we covered in Email Marketing 101 was to really make it short, make it descriptive, and make it urgent. So use words like learn more now, donate today, last chance to make a difference. That kind of language really encourages open rates. And then in terms of like, there are, again, I mean, I keep talking about ChatGPT, but I love it so much. And you can literally give me 10 email subject lines for an email about an animal shelter. And ChatGPT will spit out a bunch of stuff that you can customize and change and try.
Awesome.
And I think we only have a couple more questions here. So what type of content do you guys feel resonates the most for donors and supporters?
Ooh, Brenna, you want to start this one?
I mean, it all depends. You put some ice cream in there and I'm on board. Again, I think this is really getting to know your audience. So what resonates the most? I mean, if I'm donating to your cause, maybe find out why. How many years have I participated? When did I start? How much do I normally give? and talk to me about that and put me in the same kind of category or segment as a bunch of other people like me and explain why and how my longevity and what I've given and what it's done for the organization and how it's helped. So again, it's hard to just say generically when we're really, really, really wanting you to understand who you're speaking to and speak to them appropriately.
Yeah, I would say a general rule of thumb too, and like a common, not mistake, but a common thing that we see a lot, not just with nonprofits, but with like for profit too, is don't talk about yourself too much. You know, we tend to fall into this pattern of like, we accomplished this, or like, we did this, we're helping these people. Make it about the donor. That's what they care about, right? They want to know, you know, because of you, this was able to happen, or your gifts made this possible. This group of people is better off now because of you. That is really what they're going to want to hear, more about them and less about you, even though, you know, we all know the hard work that you're all putting in and day out, and it doesn't undermine that, but it'll help you in the long run.
And I think we got our last question here. What is the best strategy for post-campaign follow-ups, particularly for those who take actions like donations and event attendance?
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I would send out definitely at least one email when the campaign or event wraps up that shows, you know, some key highlights, how much was raised, what that accomplished, maybe tell a story from your community and a thank you. There should always be an automatic gift acknowledgement and a tax receipt that goes out so that the donor knows that their gift was received and appreciated. And then I would actually use those people as a segment. They care about this campaign or this event, you know that because they donated, then start building kind of a series of communications that are related. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the exact same thing. But if you ran a whole campaign that was raising money for, research for a specific disease, share updates, share what is the next campaign you're doing and why you're doing it again. Put them in some kind of automated sequence like we talked about, right? That communication should keep going. They should also always go in your newsletter list. So those are the things I would recommend is that first email right away that is very specific to the campaign, relevant emails on other things you're doing, and then your newsletter list.
And even add a survey. What can we do better? What do you want to see more of? Again, asking these questions, they're going to give you input. And then if you actually take action on their input, you're going to have better engagement because they're shaping how and why they're going to continue engaging with you as well.
Amazing. So, all right, everyone, that concludes today's session for today. Thank you so much again, Brian and Meredith, for today. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know that there's going to be a short survey that'll pop up right after this session. It only takes about 20 seconds to fill out, and we would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback in this session. And so I hope you all fill that out. We also have our next webinar coming up on Tuesday, October 24th, called 3 Secrets to Sustainable and Successful Corporate Partnerships. And I'm including the link to it right now. So please register for that. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.